Looking to bring a deal over the line quickly? A discount might sound like a good idea, but my guest today would like to convince you why it's not. Let's hear all about his perspective in this episode of Closing Time. Thanks for tuning into Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders. I'm Val Riley, head of marketing for Unbounce and Insightly. Today, I am joined by the one and only John Barrows, CEO of JB Sales Training and author of the book, I Want to Be in Sales When I Grow Up. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Val, thanks for having me.
So we've all felt that pressure to bring a deal over the line early. Why do you feel like offering a discount often causes sellers to lose credibility?
Yeah, so let me clarify on this because I think there's two components of the discount. One is the one that the client asks for, and then the other is the one that is proactively given without the client. And I think that's the worst one. And by the way, I'm not going to blame reps for this. I'm actually blaming managers for this because it's inevitably what happens is, the pipeline's decent, but you got to get that one extra deal in before the end of the quarter so the team can hit their quota. So the boss comes in and says, "Hey, Val, I know you were going to close that deal probably in the next month or so, but hey, if they sign today, they'll get, and we'll give them an extra discount." And then the sales rep sends that email. And after all the rapport they've developed, all the brand equity, if you will, the relationship they have gets erased in a second when that email goes out. Because you turn into the typical sales rep. Hey, I know we were going to do something, but if you close today, we're going to give you an extra 20% off. Psychologically, that does a bunch of things. A, it devalues you and the relationship that you had with that person. It cheapens the whole thing. B, if I didn't ask for a discount, what happens now when I ask for one? So now I'm like, you just put me in a position where I'm like, wait a minute, you gave me a price that I thought was a reasonable, whatever price it was. I didn't ask for a discount. Now you give me a discount without me even asking. That means your pricing structure is a joke. And so you've built in discounts into your pricing structure. So therefore, I know that if I just wait a little bit longer, right? And so that's the danger of the proactive. Now, the reactive one too, when somebody, because they're always going to ask for the discount, which I understand. But unfortunately, too many reps don't leverage it the right way. They just say sure, and they drop their pants to get to that point so that they can get the deal done. But if you can actually leverage discounts, and I encourage people to remove the word discount from their vocabulary and instead change it to creativity or flexibility. Because price shouldn't be the main driver for your decision unless you're the low cost provider. But if you've done some value, building and you have a real, they have an impact, the problem that has an impact to it and your solution can solve it, then yeah, price is a factor here, but also what's really important to them. For me, I do not discount at all. But I will give extra support. I will give extra remote sessions. I will give extra licenses to my platform so that they can help with onboarding and reinforcement and those type of things, which are usually far more important than the extra 10% they're going to get off at the beginning, just to get the deal done. So I think it's dangerous in a lot of ways. I understand why it's needed, but I beg people to stop with the proactive discounting and instead use reactively, but use it as flexibility and creativity to get away from the dollar figure.
You've touched on this a little bit, but let's nail the point, because a lot of times reps hear time kills deals, and it does. I've seen it. But also don't discount to move deals along. So let's talk about ways to expedite a deal or just keep it moving without a discount. And you started to touch on some of those tactics just now.
Yeah, I mean, again, let me be clear on this one. One of the biggest questions I get a lot of times from reps is, hey, John, how do you create urgency? And let me be very clear on this. You can't. As sales professionals, we can't create urgency. Well, I'll take that back. We can manufacture it with discounts, right? We'll try to push people over the line. But here's another part of that danger is everybody knows the discount doesn't go away, right? It's like, so you say it's a Friday, right? This is a typical scenario. It's like, oh, yeah, John, we'll sign it, if we get that discount. Great. We'll sign by Friday. Fantastic, right? Well, then Friday comes and goes. Let's say it's the end of the month. And guess what happens at the end of the month? Your end of the month happens, but so does theirs. So now legal and all this other stuff, like if I'm on the legal side of the house and I have a contract that I could help get through the process that's going to make us money, or a contract that's going to help save, that's going to cost us money, I'm obviously going to focus on the contract that's going to help us make us money. So I'm going to deprioritize yours. And so you put yourself in a position where it's like, yeah, if you close by the end of the month, inevitably the person, their Friday comes and they get busy. And so Monday hits, right? And they're like, oh, okay, so you know what? We're ready to go, John. Just send us over the contract with that. What are you going to say? No? Well, sorry, the discount expired. What did your profitability change over the weekend? Like, stop it, right? So now if you haven't, now and this gets to the point of your question, which is if you haven't uncovered true problem and impact and what they're facing and understand the impact that thing is having on their business if they don't implement your solution or a solution to address it, you're going to be stuck in this kick the can down the road. And because now if you're going to take that discount away from me arbitrarily, well, then I'll just wait till the end of the quarter. Then I'll just wait to the end of the year because you haven't done enough value generation in the discovery process to help me understand why I need this and the impact it's having on my business. So I think the key is discovery, right? Is if you are not, at the end of the day, when your C-level executive stands up in the beginning of the year and says, this is what we have to do to be successful this year. If you cannot tie your solution to one or two of those priorities and objectives, good luck selling anything of significance. So this is why instead of just selling what we have to sell, 9 times out of 10, the rep says, oh, cool, they need what I have. Let me try to sell what I have. We got to take a step back and start aligning with the objectives of the business. This is why the meeting prep is so important. Like we have to understand what are some of the industry trends that are going on out there that are impacting this organization? What are some of their priorities for this year if we can find those out? And then how does and then the persona or the department and the persona we're talking to, like how does that all align? And what is the problem that they're trying to solve? And again, what is the impact that problem's having on their business? And if you can find those things out, then you can push. Because somebody asked, John, say it's the end of the month, end of the quarter, how hard can you push to get a deal done? And my answer was, it is in direct proportion to how much it is in their best interest versus your best interest. If it is in their best interest, because if they don't do this, something's going to happen. And that's not just because they're going to miss out on the discount or they're going to stay with their existing provider. It's there's something going to happen to their business that is impactful, then you can and you should push as hard as you want. But if it's just in your best interest, because you got to close the end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year, you're just a jackass sales rep and there ain't nothing I can do about that.
Yeah. I mean, aligning to the goals of the company and goals of specific members of the C-suite is certainly key. I want to switch gears a little bit. When you are coaching people or coaching reps or leaders who work in particularly competitive spaces, sometimes those can feel like a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. So are there any specific tactics that you use, or does it just come back to that value creation that you've talked about already?
I think a lot of it has to do with, yes, and it also has to do with the criteria they're using to make this decision and what type of provider you are, quite frankly. Because if you're a high value provider versus a low cost provider, obviously different structures and different strategies associated with that. But there's always going to be a low cost provider. You know what I mean? There's always going to be. There's actually these days with AI, there's going to be something free that you are competing with now. So if you're if that's the mentality, well, then you're already sunk. Because AI can already do probably whatever your product can do at a certain level that I could figure out how to do for free. So I think one of the things is helping people understand the criteria they should be using to make a decision like this. So here's a tip I have for a lot of people, which is proven by just asking a simple question. We all gather information throughout the discovery and sales and qualification process. One of the things we should be asking is, hey, what's your decision criteria? Like what criteria, objective criteria are you using to evaluate the different solutions here? When you ask that question, my experience is 80% of the time, somebody gives you some vague answer. Well, we want to make sure it's a good fit and it's easy to use and it's, you have some experience with so it's like this, wait a minute, that seems very subjective. And is that your priority or are those other people's criterias? Like the next person I'm going to talk to, is that the same criteria they're using? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. So it's a great opportunity for us to lead the charge here a little bit. One of the recommendations I have for every organization and people listening to this is write down, brainstorm all the different criteria that you want to use, that companies tend to use to evaluate or should be using to evaluate your solution. And don't put things on there. Don't put everything on there that is your benefit, right? Put things in there that are not your benefit. So for instance, I put price on there 3 times. I put monthly cost, total cost of ownership, and ROI, right? So those are 3 different ways of getting to price. And then I'll do stuff like, for instance, for me in doing sales training, one of the things people don't really think about a lot is the personality of the trainer, right? Training's 50-50. It's 50% the content and 50% the person who delivers it. And a lot of training companies, they'll have a sales rep sell the training, but then they'll have a trainer deliver it. And so the client will buy into the sales rep selling it, but then they'll get the trainer and the trainer is a dud or doesn't resonate with their team at all. And they don't even think about that. So I'll put that on the list. So brainstorm literally everything you can think of. Get a list of maybe 10 criteria of what people should use or do use to evaluate you and other competitors. Then when the client gives you a vague answer to how, what criteria are you using, take the opportunity, a little challenger sale-esque here, to say, hey, Val, it's cool. I appreciate that. One of the things though, what I find is a lot of clients, we've done a ton of research over the years and clients understand, and here's typically the criteria that they do use and kind of walk them through. Like, here's some hidden stuff that you might not think about, right? So could you do me a favor and just walk through this with me and just kind of force rank these 1 to 10? What's most important to you? What's least important to you when making this decision? And getting to your point on price, if price is number 1 and you are not the low cost provider, then lean into it. Actually, I would actually walk away. I would use that as a disqualifier faster than ever because I don't want to waste my time running to the bottom with a client who is looking to run to the bottom. And it gives you an opportunity to go back from an objection handling standpoint. So if they say 1, I usually say, you know what, Val, if that's truly the case, if price, like monthly cost, not total cost of ownership, not ROI, but monthly cost is literally your number 1 criteria for making this decision, we can make this conversation very short. We're not the cheapest, and I use the word cheap a lot. We are not the cheapest, nor do I ever want to be. So if that's the case, why don't you go talk to XYZ, blah, blah, blah. But if it isn't number 1, if it's 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, now you have a chance. Because later on, when they say you're too expensive or it's more than I was expecting, be like, okay, Val, I appreciate that. But you had told me your number 1 priority was this, your number 2 priority was that. And that's what I built this program around. So I understand cost is an issue, but is it more important than those other 2? And I'm not saying it handles the objection. It just gives you a conversation point to then unpack a little bit more about what's really important to them.
I'm so glad you hit on total cost of ownership, because specifically coming from the CRM space, there are a lot of low cost providers out there. But when you start looking at the total cost of ownership, that monthly payment just diminishes in importance. So it's huge. So let's talk about this. So you're a great salesperson. You haven't discounted. Everything's going great. And your champion or the person you're working with on the other side is everything's going swimmingly. And then their procurement person comes in at the 11th hour and says, hey, we want a discount. So, that procurement person, that could be a wild card.
Yeah, it always is. And it's always, good cop, bad cop scenario, right? Your champion's the good cop, the procurement's the bad cop, and there's nothing I can do about it. Now, first of all, I think we need to define what a champion is. Too many people, that's another way overused word in sales. People think they have a champion just because somebody's nice to them. Look, there's not a specific definition of, every company has a different definition of champion, but I encourage everybody listening to this to actually define it. For me, a champion is somebody who's actually at the table sitting, when the door shuts to make the decision, they're there and they can fight for you. And they break rules. They get things done for you. Their actions show you they're a champion, not what they tell you. So first and foremost, and if you have one of those, then when they kick you over to procurement, you can just straight up ask them. I've done this before where I've been like, hey, look, you and I have gone through this. I'm really excited to be working with you at this point. You and I both know what procurement's job is. They're going to kick my teeth in here. So I'm going to ask you, I do have a walkaway line, and there is a line that once it goes past that line, I just walk away. So let me ask, if it gets to that line, can I pull you back in? Can I pull you back in, and will you help me make this happen? Or even better, could you just go fight that fight for me? Right? Because you know them better than I do, and look, if I have to inflate my price, I've done this before where I've had such a strong champion where I've asked them, hey, is procurement's is it 10%? Is it 20% that they're metric by? Like, what's that number? And they'll be like, yeah, it's like 10, 15%. I'll be like, do you mind if I just actually inflate my price by 10% here? So everybody wins. You get the training that you want. I get the price that I want. Procurement gets the 10% off that they want. Like, can we just do that? That's dangerous because you have to make sure you have a real champion, because otherwise they're going to use it against you. So A, leverage your champion. B, try to get procurement involved earlier. That's actually a give-get for me. And so for instance, say somebody asks for an NDA early on because whatever, that's a indicator for me that they are procurement heavy, which means I need to get legal involved early. So I'll say to them, hey, Val, happy to sign off on that NDA. Sounds like there's a lot of contractual stuff here that, you guys probably have to go through to get this done. Would it make sense to bring procurement in early so they feel part of this process? Because when you can bring procurement in early, they actually become your advocate. If they're late, they're going to be an adversary, because 9 times out of 10, what happens is the champion does their thing. They go through the process and then they literally just dump it on procurement's desk and say, get this done. And with no context or no involvement, procurement's going to do what procurement does. They're going to cross every T, dot every I, cut every, you know what I mean? But their job for everybody listening, it's not to get the best priced. Their job is to get the most value. It's not because if they take the price down to the point where you have to take some things out because, to get to that level, and then the product doesn't do, or the service doesn't do what they expected it to do because of that, procurement's actually on the hook for that. So that's why it's important to not just say, okay. Now, the last part of this is there is something called nibbling, which is procurement. They will get you all the way to the end. Okay. And then right at the end, they're going to say something like, so you're going to close by Friday. It's the end of the month. It. You're like, yes, sweet. You've given them a 3-year contract at a deep discount to get this all in the door. And then right at the end, they're going to just ask for something. They're going to ask for something seemingly small, but they're going to leverage the fact that you've spent so much time on this. So it'll be like, hey, Val, you know what? Yep, we're ready to get going here. Just do me a favor. Could you change the contract from a 3-year to a 1-year and send it over to you, and we'll sign it today? Now, mind you, that 3-year contract was based on a heavy discount, and most reps, quite frankly, they're going to fold at that point. But when that happens, when you're the preferred vendor, your champion's on your side and they've kind of mentally committed to going with you, and then procurement tries to pull that out, you just say no. You just straight up say no. Be like, nope. And by the way, that's important to document your discount process here, to say, hey, we started here, we went here, we went here, we went here. This is where we are. You agreed to it. At this point, it's 3 years or bust. And that's scary to do, but 95% of the time they'll fold if you are the preferred vendor.
I've seen that tactic work with getting procurement involved, even like emailing the person personally, calling them by name, greeting them, bringing them into the fold really can make that person more of an advocate for you rather than just that last stop before we get a signed contract. So some really good tips there.
One more point on that. There's a big difference. Everybody knows the decision process. You got to ask about the procurement process. The procurement process is not the decision process. The decision process is who the executives are involved and who's going to ultimately sign off on this, like the executive sign off. But that has nothing to do with the legalese. That has nothing to do with when you get to that point. So as much as we all ask, hey, what's the decision process here and who's involved? Hey, what's the procurement process like? How hard is it to get through? How long does it tend to take? When was the last time you made an investment in a software solution like ours? And what did that look like once we agreed that, right? Because if you don't understand that, you will forecast something because somebody will tell you, yes, we're going to make a decision by the end of the month. And so you will forecast it for the end of the month. And they will tell you, yep, we decided to go with you. Now go talk to procurement. 3 weeks later, 3 months later, you're in procurement hell yelling over, gross negligence over negligence, and the whole thing blows up.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes procurement just isn't used to seeing something with quite this many zeros in it, Yeah. So, and that might kick off a policy that you weren't aware of that, or a procedure that has to be added into the process. And there goes your end of the month close, right?
There it goes. Yep.
So let's talk about how much the average sales rep needs to understand the details of what goes into a company's pricing strategy. Because on the one hand, I feel like our sales reps they're working in the CRM, they're bringing in leads, they're having their pipeline reviews, they're working deals, they're working leads. They've got so much on their plates. How much do they need to understand of the high level pricing strategy? Or do we just need to keep them at a 10,000 foot level and say, hey, just go ahead and execute?
I think as it relates to working with customers, I think we can keep them at the pseudo 10,000. They have to have something to justify why their price is their price, right? Because the answer is, well, it's none of your business or whatever is probably not going to go too far. Although that should be the answer. None of your business. Like that's our pricing structure. But again, your pricing structure, if you have it like this and then you offer a massive discount, you've just eroded all credibility on that one. So that's why I do think it's important. But I actually look at it more from a business acumen standpoint. I think CFOs are the ones we as sales reps have the hardest time dealing with, okay? Because they beat the crap out of us. They're better negotiators than us. They're super objective. They're not subjective. There's no relationships usually, typically, right? So if I don't understand why more CFOs of organizations don't sit with their sales teams and educate them on finance, on a P&L, on CapEx versus OpEx, on why certain SaaS, because you and I, like the SaaS, right? It costs Salesforce $0 to give me another license that they're going to charge me $15,000 for. You know what I mean? Like, and I look at it and I'm like, back when I used to use them, I'd be like, it doesn't cost you any more. Why is it? So I could beat up a rep who has no confidence in understanding that because it's SaaS. So it's like, there's no extra cost of you turning that license on. So I'm going to fold because I have no confidence on where this pricing is or why it's priced. And I just know everybody always asks for a discount. And I know we always give discounts. So that's why I'm always going to drop my pants on that. But if a CFO educates me on, hey, here's what we're investing in. And hey, have you seen our recent annual report? Let me show you the investments we're making to do this. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to do our roadmap of things here. So if you just have that as just, again, I think the biggest thing that any sales rep can invest in right now, as far as tactics and tips and those type of things, if they want to stay relevant in today's world of AI, is business acumen, is just understanding business so they can have the conversation and not just immediately like, as soon as the finance conversation comes up, throw their hands up in the air and either bring in reinforcements for their manager, which devalues them, or offers a massive discount just for no reason at all. I mean, it is so easy to get a discount from people right now. It is insane. Like, it's insane. All you have to do is wait. All you have to do is ask. Sometimes you don't even have to ask. I told you, they just proactively give it to you. So I think it's more on the business acumen side than it is a tactic side. But I think it's critically important for CFOs to help educate us as sales professionals on how to have the conversation at least.
All right. Feels like it's also a good time to say if you wanted to add on a license of Insightly CRM, it'd cost you much less than Salesforce, right?
Exactly. Well, see, that's my point, right? It's like Salesforce, like what am I getting charged for here? Insightly, okay, that makes sense, but I still need to understand a little bit, right, of where this is and why it is, right? It goes back to the total cost of ownership, ROI, and all those different things.
John, we're going to stop there. You've given us so much to chew on. Thank you very much. Where can folks find you if they want to learn more about your work or follow your social media?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So LinkedIn's always kind of probably the easiest way to find me. I will say it's a humble brag, but it's a pain in the, like I've reached the 30,000 limit, so I can't accept any more connections, but you can follow me and everything else. But if you go to my website, jbarrows.com, that's where you can get all the other social channels. Actually, Instagram is where I do a ton of free stuff. So John M as in Michael Barrows, that's my handle there. And if anybody has any questions, they can hit me up on Instagram and I'll typically get right back to them, like, DM or something like that. I'll get right back to them. But yeah, there's all sorts of fun stuff. You can newsletter, free content on YouTube, everything else. So
awesome. I mean, feels like hitting that 30,000 limit. That's, certainly an accomplishment. So congrats.
I've been at the game a little bit longer than most. Like, I think I was member 32,143 on LinkedIn. So I was like 2003 is when I got on the platform. So, 400,000 followers. I think it's just more longevity than anything else.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Val. I appreciate it.
Thanks to all of you for tuning into Closing Time. Remember, if you sign up for the Closing Time newsletter, you can get this show and John delivered right to your inbox. Click the link in the show notes right now, and you'll find clips on all of Insightly's social channels about Closing Time. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.